Hello everybody, today we're going to talk about enzymes. Enzymes are protein catalysts that are going to be utilized throughout our body. They are comprised of amino acids. Everybody to feel comfortable with their activity, their specificity, and just them in general. So let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to establish is that these things are all protein molecules, okay? And proteins can be made in endless iterations. You have your 20 amino acids. They can be assembled pretty much in any way, shape, or form to create molecules that are specific for specific tasks. And I'm going to say that word specific several times throughout this presentation. Really important that you understand that these enzymes are proteins. They also are going to be a tool that our body is going to use, our cells are going to use to speed up reactions. So the terminology for that there, anything that's utilized to speed up a reaction is called a catalyst. And so enzymes are protein catalysts. So this is our stomach here. You can see some of the inner folds and your sphincter muscles before and after. But food is going to come down the esophagus and enter the stomach, and it's going to get moved around a lot, but eventually something like this could get broken down. But the idea is that these enzymes that are in our stomach, like pepsin, are going to be able to catalyze the rate at which these things are broken down. Okay, so when we swallow food, in our saliva we have several enzymes that are helping to break down carbohydrates. In our stomach we have several enzymes that are going to attack this food, and if the environment is correct, they're going to break that food down, and it's going to be broken down to amino acids that can later get absorbed into the small intestine. Okay, so again, catalysts are going to help us to carry out activities. It's just one graphic depiction, but on a cellular level, thousands and thousands of interactions every second of every day are mediated by enzymes. Pretty much any activity to get from point A to point B, you can bet that there's some form of an enzyme that is going to be involved in that interaction. Okay, so more on the specificity of these things. This is a globular protein. Again, this is just a graphic depiction. They don't really look like this, but this is an active site for bonding we'll look at a little bit later. And this right here is an active site for bonding as well. This active site is the one that we're primarily concerned with, because this is where the substrate molecule, or the molecule that the enzyme is going to work on, is going to bind to this enzyme. So I have two potential substrate molecules over here, and you can see here, hopefully, the orientation or the shape of this substrate molecule should match up pretty nice over here, whereas this one, not so much. And that has a lot to do with the specificity of how this amino acid chain was bonded, the hydrogen bonds, the tertiary structure, quaternary structure, all of those things are involved in that final shape. Okay, so let's see what happens here if we try to bind this over there. Okay, you can see it's not matching up. It's not successful, so this enzyme is going to do absolutely nothing for this molecule. Okay. On the other hand, if it has the ability to interact with this molecule, you're going to see that that substrate fits right in there at the active site, and at this point we formed what's known as an enzyme substrate complex. So these two things are attached, and what would happen, let's say if this was a carbohydrate in your mouth, and salivary amylase was trying to break down some of the carbohydrate structures in a food item that you were just eating, they would attach to the food item, and then they'd put pressure on it to cleave it. Okay, and so this molecule actually will change shape slightly to put pressure on the substrate molecule and make it easier to break. And that's really what's happening. That's all done by this enzyme, and that's what allows these things to be catalysts. Okay, so for every enzyme, there's only one substrate they're going to work on. The enzyme is not consumed by the action, so once it breaks down this substrate molecule, it's going to be able to go and attach to another substrate molecule, and then another, and then another, and then another. Proteins themselves can be degraded, but enzymes typically are going to be utilized more than one time before they wear out, if you will. And I like to think about it like it's a lock and key, right? So this key hopefully is only going to be able to fit into this one deadbolt, and that's the only way that we're going to be able to get that door unlocked. Okay, So the same thing's happening here. The substrate is going to attach to only one enzyme. So if you didn't have that enzyme, that substrate would not be able to be broken down with the speed or the rate that we're used to, or maybe not even at all. Okay, and in other settings, having additional enzymes will enable you to break down a substrate molecule a lot faster. Okay, so I want to go into a little bit more on the specificity of these things. Okay, so I have a coordinate structure of an amino acid chain over here, or several amino acid chains. You can see here some of the alpha helical structures. Try to draw in a couple beta pleated sheets. I just really want you guys to know, like, disulfide bridges. I just really would like you guys to know that we have a great amount of complexity that goes into that molecule. Specific turns, specific bends, specific reflection of light, and that's all part of what this final structure is meant to be. You have your N terminus, your C terminus, and this thing is beautiful. It's folded in a very particular pattern, and if I change even a small section of this, alter one amino acid, I then change the shape. And this is something you're going to see repeated and repeated and repeated in biology. But even a small change to these disulfide bridges or hydrogen bond formation, any of those things alter the shape. When you alter the shape of a protein, it alters its function. I'm going to repeat that again. When you alter the shape of a protein, it alters its function. Okay, so if I was to take a protein, let's talk about albumin. Albumin is egg white, and when you first crack the egg, everybody knows that it's clear. This would be the protein in its native state, folded the right way, and then as soon as we hit that thing to a little bit of heat, what's going to happen is the protein, even though it's still comprised of the same amino acid structure, is going to unravel. This unraveling of a protein is called denaturing a protein. Okay, again, we have our N terminus, our C terminus, but all of the bond formation, the secondary, tertiary, quaternary structures that existed prior to the addition of the new environmental factor, heat, are all gone. So this obviously would not function the same as this. And once we convert that protein to like its white state where it's cooked, we're not going to be able to reverse that reaction. Occasionally, if a protein has been unfolded, it does have the ability to regain its original structure if the environment is shifted back toward norm. This is reverse denaturing, and it can occur in the condition as stated before with the egg white. This is an extreme state, so there's not going to be an ability to renature that protein, but it does occur sometimes in nature. So I know heat is very obvious. We do that every morning pretty much, but the same could be said if I took that same albumin protein and put it in an extremely acidic condition. It will cook as well. It will denature. Okay, you guys, high salt, variation of tonicity, osmolarity, pH, temperature, all of these things impact how this protein is going to function. Okay, so every enzyme in your body is designed, arranged in a way to work at a particular environmental parameter, and anything outside of that parameter is going to reduce the protein's ability to do its job. Okay, it could reduce it to the point of being denatured, or it could just simply reduce how efficient that enzyme is at doing what it's supposed to do. You should be able to predict now any enzyme within a human being is meant to operate at 98.6 for the most part in terms of temperature. If our temperatures get too hot, absolutely we can have enzymes denatured. Okay, if our temperatures get too cold, these enzymes are going to lose a lot of their functionality. Okay, so this is a really big part of physiology, and if we had a soil microbe, obviously the enzymes are going to work at a particular temperature based on that soil parameter. Okay, and everything in life is specific in that way. Okay, so let's just look at a couple graphs to close things out here. Okay, so in terms of what's happening on a physical science level, we have a free energy graphed out here on this axis and time going across here. Okay, so there's two different types of reactions I want everybody to be familiar with. One is going to be a breakdown reaction, a catabolic reaction. So typically when we have breakdown, we start with reactants, excuse me, that are more ordered, and we're going to end with products that are less ordered. Okay, or have more energy up here, less energy up here. Okay, so we can talk about them as being exothermic, exogonic. Any of these terms would be appropriate depending on whether they release heat or just straight energy. So initially, in order to break something down, you're going to have to invest some energy. So you can see here that the amount of energy, the free energy available, is increasing here. And energy has to be put in initially to cause that release of energy. And then again, our reactants are going to have less energy than our products that we started out with. They typically would be smaller. And again, that energy is not disappearing. It's being released in some way, shape, or form. Okay? So activation energy is this energy, the energy of investment to get to the top of that mountain. And then from here, it's going downhill, right? So the energy to get to this point is called the activation energy, or E sub A. I hope that everybody would make sense. It's from about here to about here on this graph. So that would be the activation energy to have this exogonic activity take place. Okay. All right. So if I add an enzyme, what we're doing is we're reducing the activation energy here. The same energy output is recognized or able to occur, and the only thing that's changed on this graph here is the amount of energy I have to put in to get to that peak. Okay. So that is what enzymes do for us. They reduce the E sub A. They don't impact the amount of free energy that's released, but they do impact the total energy investment. And this again would be on a releasing type reaction, a catabolic reaction where heat or energy is released. Okay. Let's look at the second type of reaction that we see in nature. It's a buildup reaction. And a lot of times these two things are coupled, right? So you release energy to be able to build other structures, like we release the energy from our food to be able to put together our bodies and keep it ordered. Okay, so again, free energy and time. So this is a positive delta G. So we have an increase in the change in free energy. So our reactants are less ordered, our products are more ordered, and in order to establish that or accomplish that, we're going to have to put in a whole crap load of energy here. So this is all the energy investment phase. And if you're paying attention to what I just said, all of this energy for the investment could come from an exergonic activity. So we could break something down to provide the energy for buildup. Okay, those are called coupled reactions in nature, and they're very common. Okay, so enzyme in this condition or for this particular activity is going to again reduce my activation energy. So that's the realized reduction in activation energy. The activation energy in this graph again would be from here to the peak. So we have a huge activation energy that would be on this. Okay, so if I go back to this, guys, the activation energy from here would be from this point to the peak, and when I go here, it would be from this point to the peak. So this would be with an enzyme again, and the activation energy is greatly reduced. I hope that all of that has made sense. In our next video, we'll look at a couple graphs to try to figure out or establish how enzymes can be altered by alterations to the environment. Okay, thank you, have a good day.